بس في ناس بدهم يدخلوا.
سوري رامي.
بس توهي ممكن ندخل. اوكي بيرفكت.
تمام رامي.
اوكي. اهلا وسهلا فيكم كلياتكم. اسمي رامي الدوار، one of the leaders of AWS community Jordan. اليوم very interesting topic. معنا بما نحكي عن CloudFront، معنا سينيور انجينيرز من AWS، معنا محمود صبري ومحمد الطيب مشكورين جدا على الوقت تبعهم. كالعادة اي توبيك نسال عنه بنحاول بس تشرحوا لنا عنه اكثر. محمود اكثر مره شارك معنا، ومحمد على ما كثير يشارك.
رامي سوري، الصوت عندك مو واضح، ما بعرف إذا عندك سماعة. أيوة جرب مرة ثانية.
يمكن المايك. كنت عم بشكر فيكم واحد فيكم. هلا المايك معك باي ذا واي، احنا هاي مسجلينها عشان نرفعها على اليوتيوب شانل تبعت AWS كوميونتي جورنال.
تمام، بس صوتي واضح، أنا مسموع الصوت تمام. رامي محمد شباب. أوكي تمام. مساء الخير، الله يعطيكم العافية جميعا. شكرا لحضوركم معنا اليوم. أول شيء أنا اسمي محمود الصافي. I think إنه يعني في السيشنز اللي قبل هيك التقينا أكثر من مرة مع الشباب. أنا Senior Solution Architect في AWS based في دبي. بشتغل مع الكاستمرز في الميدل ايست بشكل عام. اشتغلت مع كثير كاستمرز بالاردن، واشتغلت بالاردن قبل ما انقل على دبي تقريبا 10-11 سنه تقريبا. فيعني لي زملاء كثير منكم موجودين معنا هسه حتى في هذا السيشن. فشكرا مره ثانيه لحضوركم. اخترنا هذا التوبيك صراحه لسببين. اول شيء السبب الاول كان انه زي ما حكى رامي في كثير اسئله عم تيجي على هذا التوبيك. انا انسالت اكثر من مره من اكثر من حدا انه في استفسارات كثير على الموضوع، فحبينا انه نحكي عن هذا التوبيك ونسمع اسئلتكم. والسبب الثاني انه زي ما تحكي انه هذا التوبيك من التوبكس اللي يعني واحدة من التكنولوجيز اللي بصير عليها تشينجز كثيره وبصير عليها ابديتس كثيره. في كثير اشياء قاعده بتصير على الايدج سيرفيسز بشكل عام. حبينا انه نخليكم تشوفوها كمان اليوم من ناحيتنا احنا من AWS. وكمان نحكي اكثر على موضوع الدايناميك كونتنت ديليفري، التوبيك اللي مش الكل بحب انه يحكي فيه لانه اتس نوت لايك ستريت فورورد توبيك. فحكينا قبل هالمرة بأكثر من ديسكشن عن الستاتيك كونتنتس، بس المرة هاي شوي حنكون شوي مختلف، إشي بسيط بالنسبة للدايناميك كونتنت. حنحكي عن التوبيك بشكل عام. حبلش معكم أنا في introduction، بعدين أنا I will hand it over لمحمد. أول شيء لما نحكي edge services إحنا بنحكي عن قسمين من السيرفيسز. القسم الأول اللي هو خلينا نحكي اللي هو الكاشنج والبرفورمانس والليتنسي لاير، والقسم الثاني اللي هو السكيورتي لاير. في القسم الاول احنا بنحكي عن كلاود فرونت ككاشنج سيرفيس على AWS، بتساعدك انك تكاش الستاتيك والدايناميك كونتنت. الراوت 53 اللي هو DNS سيرفيس على AWS. الجلوبال اكسلريتور اللي بيساعدنا انه تو امبروف النتورك latency. واللامدا ات ايدج وكلاود فرونت فانكشنز. لما نحكي لامدا ات ايدج وكلاود فرونت فانكشنز احنا بنحكي عن وسيله جديده عم نستخدمها، او مش جديده هي فعليا، بس هي وسيله احنا عم نستخدمها to execute الفانكشنز والكود اللي بدنا نكتبها للويب ابلكيشنز على الايدج، مشان تعطينا latency اقل، وعشان كمان نقدر نعمل changes على الويب ريكويستس اللي عم بتصير عندنا on the fly، يعني على الايدج دايركت. من ناحيه ثانيه القسم الثاني اللي هو زي ما حكينا السكيورتي، وبالسكيورتي كمان على الايدج بيصير عندنا سكيورتي كنترولز زي الويب ابلكيشن فايروول، وين بالمكان اللي انت بتقدر تعمل فيه كونفيجريشن للويب رولز والاي سي الز. بتقدر تتعامل مع كل الريكوستات اللي جايه عندك للويب ابلكيشن، وبيزد على هاي الرولز انت اتليست تقدر تعمل allow deny challenge يعني whatever action. طبعا السيرفيس فيها كثير functionalities، انا حبيت بس احكي high level for now. الشغله الثانيه اللي هي الشيلد. الشيلد اللي هو الديدوس ميتيجيشن تول على AWS. اهم شيء بالشيلد انه موجود عندنا يعني 2 سبسكريبشنز. الاول بيسك موجود الكل بيقدر يستخدمه، هو لاير 3 لاير 4 ديدوس ميتيجيشن، او انه السبسكريبشن الثاني اللي هو خلينا نحكي انكلودينج اللاير 7 انكلودينج يعني خلينا نحكي فانكشناليتيز ثانيه رح نحكي عنها ان شاء الله بتفاصيل. واخر شيء الفايروول مانجر، يعني اكثر من سكيورتي جروب. الموضوع بصفي كمان على الإدج سيرفيسز، نقدر نستفيد من الفايروول مانجر تو مانج النتورك ترافيك على الابلكيشنز سواء ان او اوت. لما نحكي جلوبال ايدج نتورك، احنا بنحكي عن هيوج ايدج نتورك ل AWS around the world. تقريبا عندنا 600 بلس بوينت اوف بريزنت في اكثر من 50 countries. بنحكي عن 100 plus cities around the globe فيهم هاي ال point of presence. بنحكي برضو عن 33% year over year increase في الانفراستراكشر. فاحنا كمان يعني هذا اللي انا كنت حبيت احكيه في البدايه، انه AWS عم تشتغل على انه to keep developing ال edge services to keep increasing، وخلينا نحكي انه نكبر هاي الانفراستراكشر على قدر المستطاع لحد ما نوصل لكل مكان في العالم انه يكون في عندنا the lowest latency possible. طبعا في عندنا edge locations. عندنا بهاي الرسمه بتعطينا هيك يعني لمحه سريعه على الedge locations اللي موجوده عندنا. بتعطينا لمحه سريعه لما يكون في multiple edge locations موجوده بنفس المدينه او بنفس الكونتري. طبعا ليش multi edge locations؟ لانه بتكون يعني في حاجه اكبر في هاي المناطق انه يكون في عندنا زي ما حتى انتم عارفين في الميدل ايست في عندنا اكثر من ايدج لوكيشن. فبشكل عام تقريبا هي اراوند ذا وورلد. اخر شيء بحب اذكره هنا اللي هو الريجنال ايدج كاش. الريجنال ايدج كاش هو موجود، هو فعليا زي الايدج لوكيشن، بس اكشلي هو it's acting as like يعني intermediate caching layer بين الاوريجن والايدج لوكيشن. هلا هو يعني بيعمل ستور للكونتنت less frequently، تمام، اللي هي less frequently accessed content، وهي اللي ممكن تكون more popular، اللي راح يكون عليها access اكثر، وبنقدر نعمل عليها اكشن، وهي اكشنبل اكثر بصراحه. يعني بنقدر نعمل عليها كمان اكشنز اكثر. يعني زي ما حكينا احنا عندنا لمدا ات ايدج وعندنا كلاود فرونت فانكشنز. اللمدا ات ايدج واحده من الفانكشنز اللي بنقدر نشغلها على الريجنال ايدج كاشز، بتعطينا كابابيلتيز اكثر، بتعطينا فلكسبيليتي اكثر كمان في الاكسكيوشن. امازون كلاود فرونت من ناحيه خلينا نحكي بنفيتس، هي بتعمل ريديوس للليتنسي زي ما حكينا، لانها بتعمل ديليفري للداتا ثرو البوينت اوف بريزنس اللي عندنا 600 بلس بوبس اراوند ذا وورلد. اوتوميتد نتورك مابينج اند انتليجنت راوتنج، يعني من عندنا حتى من عند الاند يوزر ما في اي كايند اوف اكشن. الأهم من هيك إنه كمان it improves the security with the traffic encryption and access controls using زي ما حكينا shield standard يعني shield standard without any additional cost. حتى shield advance ممكن يكون برضو مع additional cost، لكن ممكن يكون الكفرج تبعته من ناحية functionality أعلى. كمان واحدة من الشغلات اللي أنا بشوفها كتير من الكاستمرز اللي بحكي معهم يعني بيعانوا منها، اللي هي خلينا نحكي الداتا ترانسفير، خصوصا اللي بيستخدموا مثلا AWS او اي كلاود بروفايدر ثانيه تو هوست الابلكيشن تبعهم، وبنفس الوقت بيستخدموا ثيرد بارتي بيكون عليها الايدج سيرفيسز زي يعني الابلكيشن موجود على AWS الكاشنج لاير موجوده على ثيرد بارتي. بهاي الحاله راح يكون في عندنا داتا ترانسفير اوت من AWS او من اي كلاود بروفايدر ثانيه لهاي الثيرد بارتي، فبالتالي بهاي الحاله بيكون في كوست عالي على الداتا ترانسفير. فهاي واحده من الميزات لما انت تكون الابلكيشن تبعك موجود على AWS وبتعمل الكاشنج برضه على AWS من كلاود فرونت، انه زيرو فيز للداتا ترانسفير اوت from AWS origins to CloudFront. وزي ما حكينا customize the code you run at the CloudFront Edge using CloudFront Edge functions and Lambda Edge. يعني يوز كيس بسيطة، في يوز كيسز كتير بس يوز كيس بسيطة إنه إذا بدك تعمل أي موديفيكيشن على الهيدرز، على الهيدرز تاعت الريكوست لما يوصل للإدج أو لما قبل ما يوصل للسيرفر تقدر تعمل موديفيكيشن عشان تاخذ تفاصيل أكتر أو عشان تعطي تفاصيل أكتر في هاي الهيدرز. بعض اليوز كيسز للكلاود فرونت بلش في الميديا ستريمينج. ميديا ستريمينج يعني يعني اي حدا كثير عم نشوف ويب سايتس تعمل ميديا ستريمينج، سواء لافلام، سواء لاي كونتنت، سواء لاخبار، سواء وات ايفر. هاي الميديا ستريمينج زي ما بتعرفوا انتم هي بالنهايه فيديوز عم تتحمل، عم بيصير لها ستريمينج اوفر ذا انترنت. كلاود فرونت واحده من اليوز كيسز، وهي واحده من الديب كيسز اللي بيقدر يساعدنا كلاود فرونت انه تو ستريم هاي الفيديوز من الايدج لوكيشنز، بالتالي بيحسن الليتنسي. يعني لو احنا عم نعمل ستريمينج لكل العالم من سيرفراتنا اللي موجوده، خلينا نحكي في اليو اي مثلا، في اليو اي ريجن، بالتالي باليوزنج الميديا ستريمينج سيرفيسز احنا بنقدر نخلي الستريمينج يصير من الايدج لوكيشنز كمان عشان نحسن البرفورمانس. static web resources، اي static web content بنقدر نحطها على كلاود فرونت، بالتالي احنا بنقدر نحصل cached content. طبعا بالرولز اللي احنا بنطبقها، سواء للاكسبيري، سواء للديوريشن، للكاشنج، وات ايفر بنقدر نعمل للستاتيك ويب كونتنت بنقدر على كلاود فرونت. لارج فايل داونلود يوزنج، زي ما حكينا في عندنا اكثر من طريقه، من زي مثلا زي الجلوبال اكسلريتور، زي الفايل داونلود يوزنج اللي هو خلينا نحكي بمبدا هي انه بريكس داون الفايل اكثر من جزء، وممكن يصير نعمل له داونلود اذا كان عندنا لارج فايلز، مشان اليوزرز تبعونا بدل ما يستنوا يعملوا داونلود للفايل وياخذ منهم كثير وقت طويل، ممكن الايدج لوكيشنز كمان تساعدنا بهذا الشيء وتوصل هاي الداتا بطريقه اسرع. الهول ويب سايت راح نحكي بتفاصيل اكثر عنه بشوي هلا بالدايناميك كونتنت. وفاينلي الموبايل ابلكيشن، زي ما بتعرفوا في اكثر من سيرفيس على AWS ممكن تستخدموها الموبايل ابلكيشن ديفلوبمنت، مثل امبليفاي، مثل بكثير سيرفيسز. الفكره انه هاي السيرفيسز معظمها انتجريتد مع كلاود فرونت، فبالتالي حتى الموبايل ابلكيشن ديفلوبمنت مجرد ما انه نعمل ديفلوبمنت على امبليفاي فور اكزامبل، بنقدر نطلع كمان في كلاود فرونت URL الابلكيشن هذا هوستد على ايدج لوكيشن وكاشت جاهز انه تسيرف اليوزرز. دايناميك كونتنتس حكينا، هي هاي الكونتنت اللي موجوده لكنها بتتغير، مش زي الستاتيك كونتنت. هاي الكونتنت cannot be cached usually لانها يعني بتطلع بناء على بروسيسنج، بناء على اناليسيس بتصير على الويب سايت قبل ما نرجعها لليوزر، فبالتالي كاشنج ما بنقدر نرجع نفس الداتا لكل اليوزرز، فبالتالي ما بنقدر انه تكاش هاي الداتا. هاي الداتا مثل الاي بي اي كولز للدايناميك ريسبونس، الانباوند داتا، البيرسونلايزد كونتنت، الشوبينج كارت فور اكزامبل. والشوبينج كارت يعني اوبشن، يعني مثال حلو لما يكون عندنا اي كوميرس ويب سايت شوبينج كارت، نقدر نعمل يعني كاشنج للكونتنت الستاتيك زي الصور، زي الفونتس، زي السي اس اس فايلز، جي اس فايلز، وات ايفر، نقدر نعمل لهم كاشنج. لكن لما نحكي عن الشوبينج كارت احنا نحكي على شيء فيري دايناميك، فيعني بالتالي ما بنقدر تكاشت. وهون الفكره احنا ما بنقدر نعمل كاشنج لهاي الكونتنت، بس بالايدج لوكيشن احنا اتليست بنقدر نحسن performance للدايناميك كونتنت. Dynamic content delivery, why should we consider using CDN for dynamic content delivery, and what benefits of do CloudFront as CDN cloud provide for dynamic content delivery. هدول هم الموضوعين تقريبا المين اللي راح نحكي عنهم اليوم، بالإضافة لبعض الأشياء. لكن محمد يمكن بسيب لك من هون تكمل أنت على البرفورمانس.
اوكي، شكرا محمود على الانترو. Hello everyone. I think إنه هاي أول مرة أحكي معكم. So I'll introduce myself, then we will deep dive a little bit into how CloudFront help to deliver and accelerate the dynamic from performance perspective and other benefits. So my name is Mohammed Al-Tayyib. I'm a senior solution architect, specialist on edge services. based out of Dubai. I have been with AWS for almost 3 years now. Before that, I used to work for a media company as a DevOps manager for a couple of years here, also in Abu Dhabi. So as Mahmoud said, CloudFront is helping not only accelerating dynamic content, it also helped to accelerate dynamic content, which is something that not everyone is aware of it. Not everyone is having this kind of idea how we actually help to accelerate that. So there is a multiple way to accelerate dynamic content, starting from performance, security, and reliability, for example, as well. So from performance perspective, Mahmoud, next slide, please. So from performance perspective, we need to look into beneath the below, how actually CloudFront is working and how we decide which edge location is the best for the customer at that point to serve the request. So CloudFront as a CDN is a DNS-based routing services. So whenever there is a request landing on our edge location, for example, I have example.com/index.html. The request is landing on the DNS resolver. The DNS resolver will resolve to a random domain that has been assigned to CloudFront distribution. That will come up with multiple IP addresses. These IP addresses is tied up with our edge location. Now, at that point, we need to say which edge location that need to actually get that request and route the request to it and check if it's actually available in the cache or it's not available in the cache or forward the request to the origin. To look into the metrics that we are using, it's real-time data. It's real-time data. So we look into our edge location, the health of the BOB, the performance of the BOB, and the capacity of the BOB itself, and the network capacity at that time. For example, مثلا أنا عايش في دبي هنا, we have 2 edge location, one in Dubai, one in Fujairah. Whenever I request anything that served through CloudFront, you need to make sure that the edge location in Dubai and Fujairah is the best for me. It could be the closest for me from network perspective and routing, but there is a problem with the server capacity, or there is a problem with the edge location itself. It cannot actually serve that content at that time. So it's need to take a decision real time to route me away from that edge location to go a different edge location, which could be the nearest closest one to me. So we collect all this data in real time and we feed it back to our smart DNS decision maker, and that tell CloudFront where to route the traffic to it. That's happening on the static, on the dynamic. It doesn't really matter. It's a matter of decision which edge location should route the traffic to. Next slide, Mahmoud. Now, CloudFront, as Mahmoud said, or as he mentioned at the beginning, we have 2 types or 3 types of caching layer. The first one, which is the edge location. This is the first layer where we aggregate all the traffics coming from a different location, and we decide which edge location is the best. If you are, for example, if you are based in Jordan, the best edge location from my perspective, it could be something in Europe and Frankfurt, because we have a direct peering, for example, with from ISPs in Jordan directly to Europe, or in Egypt, where we launched our edge location a couple of months back as well, and that's happening on the fly. So the first layer, usually it's the edge location. If the object is available there from static, from the static perspective, if the object is already there, it will be served from there. Now, let's say the object is not actually available on the first layer of caching, which is our edge location. This is where we have the mid-tier caching. We call it regional edge cache. Regional edge cache, it's around 14 edge location around the globe, and every group of edge location, it's tied to one. The reason we have actually designed it this way to reduce to offload traffic from the origin. For example, you have an object which is not popularly accessible through edge location, but in the same time, you set the TTL for it like 1 month, so it will stay in the mid cache. And when the request is actually coming from, let's say, a user coming from Jordan, hitting the edge location in Egypt, the object is not there, but it's on the mid-tier cache. So the request will not be routed to the origin. It will be routed to the mid-tier cache, which is our regional edge cache, tied up to edge location in Egypt, to fetch the object from there. If the object is not there and its caching expired, then it will go to the origin. The reason why we have this is to improve the cache ratio for the static content, and at the same time offload all that kind of traffic away from the origin, because we don't need actually to bombard the origin with every request going back from the client or from the browser, from the mobile application to the origin. In the same time, the mid-tier is actually using something called request collapsing. For example, in this case, you have a multiple request coming from a different edge location, and it's coming from the to the same object. And the same object is not actually available in the cache. It's the first time you request it. It's a mess in this case. So when all these kind of requests is actually reaching the mid-tier cache, we don't forward all of them to the origin to fetch the content. We just forward one request, then we take that request and we tag it with all the requests coming from the end user, and then we send it back to the end user. Next slide, Mahmoud. Now, as if you look into the diagram here, that every request from anyone around the internet is, when you request a mobile application request or a website request, usually it will be, let's say it's hosted in the US and you are in Jordan using, for example, Vodafone or other telco in Jordan. So you need to travel all the way to the hosting provider, which could be in Europe or in the US. And if you go through different ISPs, different internet hubs, dealing with different exchange and ISPs, we don't control that. You don't actually have a control over the internet. There could be a delay, a latency. There could be a rerouting happening that increase the latency, where your application could be very sensitive for latency. For example, an application presenting a live score for the football match, it's very sensitive for the latency. The stocks exchange, all of these kind of data, real-time data, it's need to avoid the internet, because it's not predictable and you cannot have control of that. But once you have CloudFront on top of your application, in this case, what's usually happening is that once the request is being sent to the host name or the host application, it will resolve to CloudFront edge location, which is the nearest one, and from there it use our backbone. So you are actually isolated from all the internet. You're using our backbone. And the good thing that we control our backbone, we are responsible of any things happening within our backbone itself. If there is congestion, we're responsible for make sure that we mitigate that congestion. If there is a security problem, we're responsible for that as well. We look after it. And in this case, you actually avoiding any unpredictable problems that's happening over the internet. That's one of the benefits that you actually, you get it when you start using the CDN or for the static or dynamic in both cases. Okay, another benefits here, usually it's not just for the dynamic, it's also for the static as well, but a very obvious benefits coming from dynamic traffic. For every request happening between the client and the platform, you need to do TLS handshaking, which is any modern browser right now is actually doing it. So most of the traffic over the internet, 99%, it's coming over HTTPS. No one is actually using HTTP anymore right now. Even the modern browser will actually reject this kind of requests right now. So to do a TLS termination, do all that three handshake between the client and between the server. So you send the request and acknowledge, then acknowledge client send hello, then the server hello, acknowledge that, then sending the certificate, then the client is starting sending the GET request And this is where the first byte will be served in this case. So this is a 4-round trip between the client and server till start getting the first byte from the application. Imagine that you're actually doing that over the internet, and your application is hosted in Virginia, for example, with 300 millisecond latency. So if you do the calculation, that's almost a 1 second to get the first byte. But when you have an CloudFront on top of your application, Mahmoud, can you just one click? Yes. So if you have CloudFront on top of your application, and especially if it's in a dynamic kind of content like API or GraphQL or any content that is not cacheable, so the TLS termination will happening on the edge location. For example, if I'm initiating a request from my client here in Dubai, and the traffic is being routed to the edge location on Dubai or Fujairah, that's 7 maximum to 8 milliseconds. So compare that kind of timing, 7 to 8 milliseconds to complete the round trip and get the first request, comparing to almost 800 milliseconds over the internet to complete the 4-round trip and get the first request. This is going to be like a crucial improvement in performance when it's coming to a dynamic content where you don't need to cache. You just need to always hit the origin and get the response from the origin through AWS backbone. Next, Mahmoud. Yeah, okay. So looking into it into other perspective. Now, we have done the TLS handshake. We are getting the first bytes through HTTP GET request, and the data is flowing. In the same time, there is another customer or another client trying to access the same content in this time. One click, Mahmoud. In the same time, there is one customer or one other client trying to access the same data. What CloudFront offer in this case is reusing the connection, or we call it the persisting connection between CloudFront and the origin. So if we have a TLS handshake is done and there is a secure connection with the origin is already open, so the second request or the second client trying to get that content from the origin, it's going to use or leverage that connection which is already been established with the origin. We maintain that to reduce number of connection going back to the origin. In the same time, to improve latency in case we need 7 millisecond, 8 millisecond from my location to initiate and get the first byte from the content. From the second user, in the same time, it will go way below down, maybe 2 or 3 milliseconds in this case, because we're going to reuse the connection which is already secured and it's already been established with the origin in this case. Next, Mahmoud. Now, we spoke about the multiple layer for the caching. Now, maybe someone will ask me, but I don't want to have a multiple layer for dynamic content like an API. I don't want my API request to go edge location, then mid-tier, then origin. I want actually to skip that. So CloudFront designed in a way that to understand if the request is static or dynamic. The nature of the request, if it's, for example, if it's a post request, an API post request, or a put request, automatically CloudFront will not actually check the mid-tier for caching because it's very known for CloudFront by design. This is a dynamic content and it will forward all the requests on the to the origin. There is a configuration also on the CloudFront to tell CloudFront, I don't want to cache anything. For example, if you are not sending a post request or you're not doing a post request, but it's a GET request, in the same time, you don't want to cache it. So there is a policy within CloudFront configuration itself, say caching disabled. Once you have the caching disabled on your distribution, all the requests will be forwarded to the origin regardless the nature of that request. It's post, GET, delete, put, or other type of the request as well. Another thing here that if your origin is actually return a caching header with no store, for example, if you say, if I'm requesting an image and the caching header controls in the response coming with no store as a value, CloudFront will not cache any subsequent request coming after that, or will not actually check the mid-tier cache to look into a cache hit in this case. Like you are instructing CloudFront based on the cache control header, hey, this is a dynamic content, I don't want to cache it, always skip the mid layer. So you have the ability to control that. You have the ability to skip the mid tier, so you avoid one hop and you jump directly to the origin. Next, Mahmoud. So we have spoke about the performance from TLS termination, persistent connections. CloudFront by natively supporting the application layer from protocols itself. So we support HTTP2 and HTTP3. HTTP2 where you can leverage multiplexing for requests, and HTTP3 where you actually which is built on UDP and Quick protocol. So that's improve the get content from the origin, because HTTP3 is actually a protocol built on one round trip get request. For example, in this case, you don't actually need to do all the three steps in this case. We also have a TCP conjunction protocols in this case. So during that a heavy or during an event, for example, on a specific use case, for example, on the Olympics, when we notice that there is millions of requests coming to a specific edge location, that we have our TCP conjunction protocol, which is optimize the traffic and reroute traffic to a different edge location if we notice there is a problem with the network at that time, without any kind of interfering from the customer in this case. This is happening automatically from our back end. Also, we have an options to design or to say, hey, which TLS version I want to support in this case. Currently, we're supporting TLS 1.1, 1.2, and like a year back or a year and a half, we start supporting 1.3, which is coming with session resumption. So if the session of TLS is already open, you can actually leverage that session and initiate TCP connections on that session without doing negotiation one more time. Next. Okay, there is an old use cases in this case where CloudFront is actually helped to improve latency for an API's calls or a dynamic type of content. One of them is Tender. So if you look into a Tender, is like it's a global application, and they with a swipe here and there, all the data is very dynamic. When they decide to have CloudFront on top of their API's calls, they have seen an improvement by almost 45%. There is some countries where the internet is not helping the client to have a better performance, where they're hosting their application in the US. In example, when the customer is coming from India, they need to use the local ISPs and travel all the way to US to fetch the content. But with CloudFront on top of that API's calls, they actually get the content through our edge location, which is in Mumbai and Delhi, and provide the internet through our backbone, reaching the origin, which is in the US, and then fetch the content. The improvement was very, very clear for them, and it's one of the very old use cases, and it's tell you that, hey, whenever we have a customer in doubt about dynamic content, say, go try it. You're not alone on this. There is other big names is actually using it, and there is a benefits out of it. Next, Mahmoud. Another case study here is Slack. Pretty much all of you guys use Slack or still using Slack. And you can see that on the left side, when Slack is actually using, they were not using any CDN. When they start using a CloudFront, they have seen a drop on the latency from almost 80 millisecond to 15 millisecond. And that's give you an indicator how efficient having CloudFront on top of your API's request and leveraging the nearest edge location for the customers. If the customer's based in X country and we have an edge location over there, automatically the traffic will be routed through that edge location. Now, speaking about the performance without speaking about security, that means there is something missing in this case. So CloudFront is not just helping with accelerating the dynamic content itself. It's helping also to secure that type of content and leverage a native feature that we provided and integration with other services that we have it for CloudFront. Mahmoud? Yeah, so CloudFront designed in a way like in a very large distributed edge location, more than 600 plus edge location across the globe with a multiple mid-tier edge location as well. And whenever there is an opportunity for layer 3 or layer 4 type of DDoS, it's very rare that will affect CloudFront in this case. So if you have an application running an API gateway, for example, and you have an ALB on top of that, and the ALB exposed to the internet, it won't be able to mitigate and scale layer 3 and layer 4 volumetric type of the attack, because it's not designed to observe this kind of hundreds of gigs of traffic like TCP flood, send flood, UDP flood, and so on. So CloudFront, having CloudFront on top of that, as a customer, you don't need to worry about layer 3, layer 4 type of DDoS in this case at all. You're going to focus only on the application itself. The way that CloudFront is work is we only accepting a well-formatted HTTP type of the request. So if the request is coming in port 80 or 443 with a proper host header known to your application, in this case we will forward the request. The rest will be dropped. So as a first gate or a first guard for your application, having CloudFront on the top, that means pretty much you don't need to worry about layer 3 or layer 4 in this case. Also, CloudFront itself is integrated seamlessly with our WAF, which is Web Application Firewall, where all you have to do is just associate your CloudFront distribution with the WAF. Then you start creating your WebACL. Then from WebACL, you create a multiple rules based on your application business itself. It won't take a lot till you have the best practice on top of your application for layer 7 in this case. Or you can use Shield Advanced, which is a more sophisticated product to protect you on layer 7, layer 4, and layer 3 based on your application traffic itself. So all these kind of benefits from security perspective is seamlessly integrated with CloudFront. Another benefits here that some of the application or some of the customers that they want to have a very handy way to do geo restrictions. It's a natively featured with CloudFront, where you can actually create a list of allow or block different countries, and it's a matter of one click to do that. So there is some customers say we are not expecting users or clients coming from X country. We don't want this kind of traffic, or we are thinking that traffic coming from this country is suspicious. We want to block it, and they don't want to go with a WAF. So through a geo restriction on CloudFront itself, they can block it, they create the list, and that's it. Or they want to allow specific countries and block the rest. It's also something that they can do it natively through CloudFront without going into WAF itself. There is more in-depth and more customer looking for more control on geo-restriction. So they want to look into a region, cities, and block according to that. In this case, customer can leverage the native headers from CloudFront, where we can pass viewer country, viewer city, regions to the origin, and using Lambda@Edge or CloudFront function on the viewer request, you can actually leverage these headers to take an action. So you can create a function to intercept the request before going back to the origin, looking into the city. If the city is XYZ, just send in and for all three, or redirect them to a different page, or just drop the request. So we give this flexibility for the customers to go in depth and decide where they actually want to have this kind of security. Is it on the country level, or you want to go down into even to the city? Next, Mahmoud. Now, there is some modern browser which is actually help you to score your application and security. They are looking for a specific type of headers, and they want to make sure that no malicious traffic will actually be performed on your application, and these headers will actually prevent attacker from sending or executing from, for example, XSS, or trying to have a different type of malicious activity, SQL injection, and so on. So through CloudFront, through a response headers or response header policy, we offer you a way to attach these headers to your request. So your client will actually get this header value when receiving the response from the origin itself. That will help you also to improve the scoring for your application. For Google, for example, when they actually do an security scoring, if they're looking for specific headers and they found that headers with the values, automatically you will get a better score, because the modern browser usually looking for these headers to act upon these headers. So if you have an XSS protection enabled, so the browser will not actually execute any kind of XSS type of the attack on your application. Now, other type of security that CloudFront is offering you here in this case, you can have multiple TLS versioning, and you can decide which ciphers that you want through the configuration itself. So it's not something that restricts to 1.3 or 1.2 or 1.1, but you can decide, hey, I want the minimum 1.2 to 1.2 SSL to be used on my distribution, or 1.3, and the rest will be actually be rejected in this case. You can also have your custom domain, for example, xyz.com, and you have your SSL certificate through ACM, which is Amazon Certificate Manager. It's auto-renew. You can just create the ACM there, and you can attach it to CloudFront distribution. You don't need to worry about the renewal, because it's auto-renew and it's coming free of charge. You don't actually pay for it at all. And also, some customers use CloudFront when they have a subscription-based application, like in a portal where people need to sign in, and once they sign in, they subscribe to make to be able to get a specific content, or to look for example, a videos, like a video on demand platform. So we offer signed URL through cookies, and to authenticate that user is actually having the right to access this content or not. you will be able to do or achieve that through CloudFront signed URL, signed cookie features as well. Now, from reliability perspective as well, we spoke about performance and security and reliability. One of the things that usually the customer is looking for is, I don't want to have an application not reliable when I use CloudFront. I'm not in the state that I can afford having a downtime. How you can help me with that? So CloudFront offer you a multiple way to do that. One of them is origin failover. There is two ways to do it. It's either you have a multiple origin, the primary one and secondary one, and use Route 53, which is an edge services as well, to detect the health check. And based on the health check response, CloudFront will actually route the traffic according to that. So if the health check coming to CloudFront as unhealthy, based on response code, if it's 200 or 300 XS, it's healthy. Other than that, it's not healthy. Then you can have a multiple origins, and you can use a DNS to route the traffic to the health one based on the health check response that you are getting. So the time of failover, usually it's based on the TTL that you have it. So if the DNS, if your application is very sensitive and you want to make sure that if there is something wrong with the primary origin, you need to reduce the TTL to the minimum. You can go with 60 seconds or less than that. And based on the DNS TTL, CloudFront will respect that regardless of the health check. If the health check is being received and the TTL is still not expired, CloudFront will not be able to do that. So you need to reduce the TTL so CloudFront can actually shift the traffic to the healthier one. The other way also to do it with CloudFront origin groups, where you can define a multiple origins. And this is here, it's based on the request itself. So you have a multiple origins, and you have primary, secondary, and so on. And you define the failover based on the response code. So let's say if I'm receiving 502 bad gateway from origin A for request B, for the first request. In this case, I will not fail over all the traffic to the secondary origin, but CloudFront, what will happen in this case? They will take this request, try to fetch it from the secondary one. If it's actually getting the object from the secondary one, it will actually continue fetching from the secondary one. If it's not actually being fetched from the secondary one is not responding, then it will serve stale content in this case. And this is another part where CloudFront help you to have if the content is not very sensitive and can actually tolerate serving stale content like an images or something not very sensitive like news or stock exchange data or something like that, you still can use serve stale while revalidate the request from the origin. But bear in mind, in dynamic request like a post and put, this will not actually be useful in this case, because post requests and bot requests like fire and forget. It's a stateless. You just send the request. You don't wait for the response to decide you're gonna shift to second origin or not. It's either you get response or not getting anything. Next, Mahmoud. Also, there is some customers where they said, hey, I don't want to have my application going offline and I'm not returning anything for my customers and they don't know what's going on. I don't want to have the black and white 503 or 502. So you can actually build an error page within CloudFront itself. And based on that, based on the response from the origin, you can use Lambda Edge to redirect the traffic to an F3 bucket, for example, to have an error page on that case. Now, there is one mistake that pretty much I have seen it in multiple cases, where the error page itself, it's within the same application origin. So in this case, CloudFront will get the response and send the response back again. So it's like you are DDoSing yourself without knowing that you are DDoSing yourself. So in this case, usually we say that you must have your error page away from the origin itself. So you can have it in a S3 bucket, use Lambda.H to route the traffic to that S3 bucket whenever there is 400 or 502 or 503. Now, another perspective, usually customers will look into it when they speak about CloudFront for the dynamic or the static. They get afraid of the cost for sure. They said, how much I'm going to pay for it and how the cost actually structure is working. So now, if you look into the structure for any 3-tier application, you have backend, front end, and then you have the internet gateway, or your entry to your application could be the application load balancer. The request will come from outside from the client to application load balancer and so on. The egress and ingress, it will go there. So you pay for anything goes to the internet. The thing with CloudFront in this case, if you have CloudFront on top of your application load balancer, anything between CloudFront and application load balancer is for free. You just pay for the traffic going to the end user. And cost perspective, or from cost-wise itself, it's way cheaper to go directly with DTO of application load balancer for a different reason. There is a different program for discount prices. We don't actually go with public prices usually when we have strategic customers or customers with 10 terabyte per month consumption. There is totally different calculation, and it's way cheaper for the customer. So when they look into the DTO fees they are paying for their application load balancer, and when they have CloudFront, usually it's 40 to 50% cheaper than the current fees they are paying. So we always say that let's do the exercise, let's look for the architecture, review it, then we give you the best advice from technical perspective. Then the commercial team will take over and go for the for exercise to give you the best cost in this case. Now, to conclude, this is the bigger topic here that which is need another session by itself, which is how to secure and deliver. I will just go with an overview how we look into application architectures from a delivery perspective. So you always, when you think about delivering an application, dynamic or static, you need to have CloudFront. CloudFront on top of your application, you can have a failover perspective. You can have L3, L4 DDoS mitigation out of the box. You can have edge function where you can offload business logic from origin to the edge. You can use Lambda.H CloudFront function, depends on the business logic that you want to do it. And in the same time, you can have CloudFront attached to WAF WebACL, where we have our managed rules to protect you on layer 7 using IP reputation list, anonymous IP list, bot control. You can build your own custom rules, or you can have a rate limit. Multiple clicks, Mahmoud. Yeah. So you can have CloudFront in your application, and you have WAF on top of that, or you can have WAF on your regional resources. In this case, you can have it on your load balancer as well. And in the same time, you can use security automation, where we have a solution that's built all these kind of architecture for you from security perspective, building the rules, automate the best practice on the WebACL, and so on. If you have a different use case from security perspective, and WAF is not capable of handling that, you can check our marketplace, where you can look into a partner like F5, Fortinet, where they have their own rules. You can import it to the WAF, and you can use it over there. it overall, from performance perspective, security perspective, CloudFront, and then your application, then your backend, then on the top you have WAF and Shield Advanced is, and I would say that it's the best way to start to build a secure and deliver a dynamic content in this case. To conclude what we have talked about, CloudFront can help with dynamic content by doing a TLS termination close to the users, using our backbone, and at the same time keeping the persistent connection between the CloudFront and Origin to reuse by other connections, and that will give us a reduced number of RTT between the clients and the Origin. From a security perspective, the design of CloudFront is built to mitigate L3 and L4 kind of attack. We only forward an HTTP request back to your Origin, port 80 or 443, the rest will be dropped. You can protect your content at the edge by having a geo-restriction or having a WAF attached to WebACL. You can have a multiple origin to choose between them for CloudFront. It's either because of the error you can switch, or you have specific content to be served for a specific country. Also, you can do that. You can have a multiple origin, and you can pick origin based on the request, on the country, and so on. From cost perspective, there is a way cost saving when you start using CloudFront rather than a public DTO for ALB, for example, or other facing internet application. As long as CloudFront supporting the origin that you actually serve your application, like an ALB, like an API gateway, AppSync, or and a custom origin, it's better to go with CloudFront for the reason that I have mentioned. That's all for me, and happy to take question or any clarification.
Thank you محمد، الله يعطيك العافية.
يعافيك محمد.
يعني شباب اللي عنده سؤال احنا
الله يعطيك العافية. Thank you محمود، الله يعطيك العافية. عندنا بالchat a couple of questions. رائد.
رائد MTLS هذا حديث العصر بالنسبة لنا احنا. Currently
the people are prepared.
MTLS currently CloudFront is not supporting MTLS. We are working to Q1 next year to support MTLS. The reason is the MTLS is mainly needed now by the SaaS platform. So if you are building a SaaS platform and you want to have MTLS and you need to have a multiple SSL within one CloudFront distribution, it's not possible because of the design of CloudFront right now. But you can go with ALB. ALB right now, Application Load Balancer, is supporting MTLS.
I think we have another question, Muhammad من عماد. Can we place an ALB behind CloudFront to leverage the benefits of obtaining geolocation data from requests?
Yes, exactly. So what you can do with the ALB is one of the origins that's supported by CloudFront. So if you have CloudFront native headers like CloudFront viewer countries, CloudFront viewer city, and you want to forward it to the origin, which is the ALB, and from there you take action according to it, yes, you can do that for sure.
أحمد حطاب باشا.
عيون أحمد، كيفك حبيبي؟
أهلا.
مش لازم ترفع إيدك أنت.
كيف الشباب؟ مشتاق لكم كثير، يعني كمشات صراحة.
والله احنا
الله يعطيكم العافية.
حبيبي يا أحمد حبيبي.
و thank you للpresenter، يعني it was so amazing info. أنا really appreciate this kind of يعني events. وعندي سؤال يعني ما بعرف is it related to this topic or not، بس هيك سؤال خطر ببالي لأنه في شوية مشاكل عليه. بتعرف بالميدل إيست مع البلوكينج اللي عم بيصير لبعض الشانلز السوشيال نتوركس زي تيك توك وغيرهم، بصير الناس يضطروا يستخدموا الفي بي انز. What is the possibility to detect the actual GIP here through this one using the VPNs through the customers?
Okay, so the X, usually CloudFront look onto the source IP addresses and X forwarder IP addresses on the header itself. So the real IP addresses will be forwarded to the CloudFront. If you're looking to mask your IP addresses through the VPN, but you want CloudFront to detect that, we will not be able to do it. But the problem, the good thing is within CloudFront, when you attach it to WAF, we have something called anonymous IP list and IP reputation list. It includes pretty much most of the VPN proxies. So you will be able to detect this request is coming through a proxy, this request is coming through a VPN XYZ. And if you want to take action according to that, you can take action according to it.
Amazing, thank you حبيبي، شكرا.
في كمان عندنا سؤال من محمد. Can we fail over with ALP custom header using key and value with the CloudFront?
Yes, you can have a custom header with a value, and you can use that custom value to detect which ALB you want to. Yani, if you have two ALBs and based on that value you want to send the request to ALB A or ALB B, you can do that. Through the configuration itself on the CloudFront distribution, you have the option to create a custom header.
يعطيك العافية محمد ومحمود.
الله يعافيك.
بس في سؤال خطر ببالي، كنت أعمل كونفيجر لواف موضوع الشات البوتس رولز على موضوع الكلاود فرونت. طبعا صار في نوع من انواع الاتاكس على موضوع انه البوت برومبت اللي بتنحط بموضوع الشات بوتس اللي جوا الابلكيشن تستخدم دايلوج فلو، هاي كانت عباره عن كيس. هاو يعني شو الانتجريشن behind the scenes اللي بصير مثلا ما بين هاي الرول بالنسبه للبوت والكلاود فرونت مثلا؟
Okay, so the bot control on the WAF itself, two categories. We have the common bots and we have the targeted bots. The common bots has mechanism to identify itself. So if I'm looking for a bot says, hey, I'm Google bot, what I'm gonna do, a reverse DNS lookup, and I should get an IP belong to Google. So if that bot is saying, hey, I'm ChatGPT bots, and ChatGPT bots is on our list is verified bots allowed to access the website or scrubbing the data, I need to do a reverse DNS lookup, and I need to get an IP belong to the OpenAI in this case. So there is a different mechanism to identify if this bot is verified in our list or it's unverified. If it's unverified, automatically it will be actually blocked immediately, because it's not identifying itself as a bot that's doing a friendly task on the websites, like scrap data and so on.
Thank you.
Sure.
تسمحوا لي last question.
يلا.
Again. Is there any possibility to build a waiting room through CloudFront?
We have a solution for waiting room.
Really?
Yes.
Can you tell me just briefly about that and just summarize things?
To be honest, I don't have the full details of it on top of my head right now, but I can share it with you. Yani, we have a solution that can build waiting room from A to Z using CloudFront as well.
Amazing. Thank you again.
Even if I recall, we have a template for that. Choose CloudFormation or Terraform. I can't recall, but I came across it once.
And does it support, مثلا, this is what I'm looking for, does it support some of sorting mechanisms like round robin, first serve, or reserve your request for your room, something like this.
Exactly. This is the basic requirement for waiting room, so it's supported. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Let me look it up, and I will pretty much I will share it with Mahmoud or Rami so we can reach out.
Yeah, I will share.
Please. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Do itself fail over to. You mean from CloudFront to another CloudFront?
Yeah, I think he means like between different distributions.
Why would you fail over between two different distributions when you can fail over between two origins? So, like an distribution A is assigned to multiple origins, and if one of the origin is down, the same distribution can continue fail over between the origin. Is there any business case I fell from distribution A to distribution B?
Maybe Muhammad, yeah, I agree that like having multiple origins will be like the optimum case here. Yeah. But if there is like a valid use case for that, route B can still like do the job, I think.
But when you create a distribution, you create a chain of configuration. It's not shared with another distribution. So in this case, the failover happening on the DNS level.
Yes.
So you create a host name with two CNAMEs, two distributions, and if A is not responding, then go with a health check on the second one. So the failover is not on the CloudFront level; it's on the DNS level.
Yeah, and actually the two different distributions will have like two different origins. So it's almost the same, like having multiple origins.
Yeah, exactly. It's because it's a different chain of configuration. The caching policy is people using custom cache policy with the lambda policy that most common customization. See, it depends on the application. So what we offer is the optimized cached managed cache policy. In this case, it works with pretty much straightforward caching requirement. Like I want to cache CSS, JS files, images for month, a year, and the rest I need to pass it to a different distribution, to a different caching policy requirement. So we have a managed policy, by the way. We have a managed policy. You can use it right away without building your custom one. But the customized caching policy is always based on the business requirement. For example, if I have an API, which is I can cache it for 10 seconds, not more, then I need to create a custom policy in this case. And on the custom policy, I need to have a behavior, say, if the request coming to /API or /REST/API, attach 10-second caching policy to that behavior. So the customized behavior is always, the customized caching policy is always based on the business requirement. The managed or built-in policy is usually cover the basic requirement for the caching. You don't have this kind of logic of business requirement, it's safe to go with the managed policy, which is managed by AWS.
Thank you, Muhammad.
السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام.
إذا ممكن سؤال إذا سمحتم.
تفضل محمد.
مثلا اذا انا قاعد استخدم يعني في 2 ريجن كل واحده فيها كلاود فرونت ديستريبيوشن حقها، فانا اقدر اسوي استخدم الراوتر 53 اسوي فيها الفيل اوفر او اللاتنسي بالروت 50 بوليسي ممكن
يس
في التحويل
يس
ديستريبيوشن ترافيك يعني مثلا
يس اكزاكتلي يجي ايوه. يعني الفكره انه انت عندك تو ديستريبيوشن في تو ديفرنت ريجن وكل واحده عندها كونفيجريشن لوحدها، بس انت يو ديسايد which CloudFront distribution based على الليتنسي حق المستخدم. اذا انا الليتنسي عندي للديستريبيوشن هذه ب 10 ملي سكند وهذيك 30 ملي سكند، انا will go for 10 ملي سكند. So you can manage this through route 53.
كمان اقدر اسوي فيها ويت، يعني مثلا يعني اوزع بينهم اذا ممكن في ذي الحالات.
بالضبط. انت في الحاله هاي لما تستخدم الراوند روبن ولا تستخدم الويت للديسيجن تبع الدي ان اس، انت ريجاردلس وين راح ترسله كلاود فرونت ولا غير كلاود فرونت it will work. لانه في النهايه هو ما راح، اذا قلت له مثلا 30% 70% between A and B، هو راح يرسلهم 30% 70% ريجاردلس لوين جالس يرسله، ل A and B ولا كلاود فرونت.
تمام، مشكور.
الله يعافيك.
تمام.
Sure.
Last question.
Yeah.
Any question when creating invalidation with wildcard for cost perspective?
Yes, we have a limit for invalidation, which is a 10,000 invalidation request. It's coming for free, and the rest after that there is a cost for it. So usually
this is monthly, Muhammad, صح?
Yes, monthly one. Yes, it's a 10,000 invalidation per month for free. After that, usually there is a cost. That's why I always recommend to use versioning. So, if your application is very dynamic and it's changing a lot, and you always need to have a fresh content or fresh files, it's either images or CS file or JavaScript, the same naming and everything, don't go with invalidation, go with versioning. So make your application dynamic. It's always look for a file name with a date, like in the JavaScript مثلا front end CSS file تاريخ اليوم .css and so on. So avoid the invalidation as a solution and use versioning للفile as the ultimate way to avoid the cost تبع invalidation.
تمام. think الامور تمام. مره ثانيه الله يعطيكم العافيه.
في كمان سؤال
رامي مايك معك.
محمود ومحمد شكرا كثير لوقتكم.
شكرا.
يعني it was insightful. ومحمد I told you they came prepared.
I like.
صار في عندنا list of questions برضو على الفولو اب عادي، وكان ممكن نعمل كمان واحدة ديبر. next one ممكن نعملها كيس سيناريوز، انه كانت في كثير اسئله related لكيس سيناريوز لبزنس معين. that's why تحس انه في applicable case scenario هون بس it's not applicable in the other hand. فممكن نعملها زي open discussion panel، شو الكيس اللي عندك واحنا what we can do at the same time.
اوكي ممتاز جدا، ما في مشكله يعني yeah we can have a different use cases مثلا ل e-commerce retail ولا fintech ولا حتى يعني it depends on ال common use cases اللي عليها اسئله كثيره. we can build the use case then can نعملها open discussion
100%. again محمد I don't think هذا last time راح نشوفك فيها
ان شاء الله.
محمود شكرا كثير لك.
شكرا.
موجود.
انا بجي عمان كثير، يعني عندي شغل دائما مع ام بي سي شاهد، فبجي كثير هناك.
يا سيدي اهلا وسهلا. خلص next time السيشن راح تكون من عندنا لبنان، راح نكون جنب بعض.
اكيد
ان شاء الله. شكرا كثير لكم كلياتكم.
كمان.
شكرا.
السلام عليكم.
شكرا.